This episode is sponsored by Roman Well. Does your Google search contain something along the lines of, what can I eat with IBD? Are you stressing about how to navigate food choices at an upcoming wedding, family vacation, or graduation party? Don't worry. The IBD dietitians at Roman Well have got you covered. They're here to help you safely expand your diet and build your confidence in food selection by providing the one-on-one support and tools you need to navigate nutrition through all of life's phases. Go to romanwell.com to apply for a free consultation so you can start feeling and living well.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, we shared a margarita with Megan Starshak, and we talked to her about finding your community, whether human or animal, through sports, support groups, other types of groups, and other means to help you cope with your disease. We talked to her about volunteering at a camp for kids with inflammatory bowel disease and running their leader in training program. We talk about her struggles with insurance, even though she's in remission. And we talk about her nonprofit, the Great Bowel Movement. Cheers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bowel Moments. This is Robin.
Hey, guys, this is Alicia, and I'm really excited because we have been trying to get Megan on with us for a little bit now, and our schedules just keep not aligning. And so I am very, very excited to have Megan join us. Megan, we'll have a chance to tell your story in a second, but we're going to ask you the very professional question of what are you drinking?
I am drinking a homemade margarita, and because it's not very big, because we only had one lime, I have a backup, which is like, I don't know, I think it might be a fake garita. It's like tequila, triple sec, and Spindrift lime.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Yeah.
It does sound perfect.
It's good, but not when you have a real margarita in your first glass. So
yeah,
in comparison, it's not as good, but this is like a nice like craft cocktail size.
It is. It is like a nice, pretty little cocktail glass even and everything. So Robin, what are you drinking?
I am totally being boring tonight, and I'm drinking a tropical cherry sparkling water.
That does sound delicious.
It does sound good. Yes. I got super excited today. And also I had some plums that needed to be eaten. And so I made plum syrup, and I'm drinking a mint and plum gin fizz. So it looks really kind of gross, frankly, but it tastes really good.
It sounds very fancy.
We're going to have to reschedule because I will see you in 5 hours when I get in my car and drive to take that.
Yay. I will have to make some more plum syrup because unfortunately it all went into the glass. I was thinking, oh, there's so much of it. And then the recipe calls for a quarter cup of this like plum compote stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's everything. So I'll have to buy some plums, but I do love that idea. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Let's move on to the second question here and tell us, what is your connection to the IBD community? Tell us your story.
I am a patient of ulcerative colitis. So I'm very much in the community. I was diagnosed in 2002 when I was just finishing my senior year in high school. So now you know that how old I am. It started out actually like fairly mild, and it started out during a run. And it really, like the first couple of times that I noticed it, it was on a run because I was on the track team, and it kind of like got worse and worse where, okay, I wasn't running. I was just kind of hanging out, and the feeling to go to the bathroom would hit me or eventually like every time I woke up in the morning, I'd have to run to the bathroom first thing. So thankfully my mom, as moms are, noticed and was like, I've noticed you spending a lot of time in the bathroom. You've been really tired. You've been having a lot of abdominal pain. Do you think this is something we should probably get checked out? And it was at a time that I think that I needed to hear, like, it's okay to admit that you're not in perfect health, and it's okay to take the next step and go see a doctor and get diagnosed. So I had gone to her internist, had a colonoscopy, got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. All of that happened within a couple of months. And it's like a weird feeling of guilt because I say that it was really fast. Like a couple months to get diagnosed is actually not really fast if you think about it. But a lot of people take a really long time and they get misdiagnosed and re-diagnosed or ignored, sent home, told us all in their head. And it can take years to get a diagnosis. So in a way, like I have the smoothest diagnosis process ever. From there, there. I started my freshman year of college. It was, to be frank, horrible timing because that's like a major life change for anybody. I moved away from home. I went to a school where I didn't really know anybody else. I was living on my own for the first time. I was meeting new people, making new friends, studying and going to class in college is totally different than high school and grade school. Just like such a huge change. And just being the person that I am, I tried to go on as if everything was normal and like we think it'll just go away, it'll clear up, or we'll take some pills and it'll be gone. But that is not the case, as we all know, with Crohn's and colitis. So it got worse. It kind of just ramped up. I had been on cross country and track teams in high school, and then in college I joined the crew team, which was really fun and just a really great group of people and a great sport, and had to step away from that because I was too sick. You couldn't very well be in a boat and pull over to use the bathroom. That's just not realistic, and it's not fair to the other people on the team. I had to give up running because it was this thing where like the act of running would trigger my bowels and I'd have to pretty much go right away. And seriously, I would have to go like every couple of blocks. It was to the point where I'm like, I'm not even getting in the actual run because I've just stopped so much. And if I'm out and about, then I have to like find places to go to the bathroom over and over and over. So that was a really hard thing for me, was to stop and say, like, I'm going to stop trying to run. Like, I'm going to let this go because it's not working. I need to take care of my health. And it was a little bit heartbreaking to let go of something that was such a big part of me. I got through college. It wasn't great. I got sicker and sicker as it went on. And I had switched to a doctor in the city I went to college, which is Milwaukee, where I still live. And he was not the best doctor. And again, we all learn so much as we go through, and there's so many things we wish we'd known earlier, which is why we share our stories, right? So I had found this doctor and he just prescribed the same things over and over. And it was just steroids and anti-inflammatories and enemas. And I don't know if you've ever done an enema in college, but no, thank you. I'd get to the point where things were starting to get approved, and I had been reading online that there were new treatments available. So I came in one day to his office and I asked him, I was like, I'm seeing that there's some other options out there. And that's all I knew at that point. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how they worked or why they would be different. All I knew is what I had been using was helping a little, but not really all the way. And, tough little college me was like, no, I can handle it. And then I was like, I don't need to handle this. That's stupid. I want to live my best life. And so I came to him and said, I would like to try something else. And he told me that these were my options. This is what I responded to. And he said, any other GI that you go to is going to prescribe the same things. And that was the last time I saw him. So I switched to the it was, I should have done it earlier. I feel like as a well-adjusted child, medicine was very straightforward. Like, you get strep throat, you take amoxicillin and you're done. You have a fever, you get a Tylenol, it goes away, like you're done. So to realize that I'm going to take medicines that might not work and I might have to readjust, like, that was a really new concept to me. And as I think it is for a lot of people, is you can't just accept the first thing that you're given. It might not work because, bodies are complicated and these diseases are complicated. So I walked out of that doctor's office and went to the Medical College of Wisconsin, which is our local teaching hospital. They got me in like last minute. I was having a particularly bad GI day. It was just like everything came together at this one point. So I go in and I tell him my whole medication history, disease history, all of that stuff. I told him my frustrations with the previous doctor. And it, like, again, I was so young. I didn't know anything. Like, I didn't know if I had to even tell my old doctor that I was never coming back. Like, I just stopped going and started up somewhere else because you don't have the energy to when you're so sick. You're just like barely hanging on. And like, to switch doctors was enough effort. Just like make a new appointment. But this doctor, he looked at me, and it was the first time that I can ever remember where somebody looked at me like I was a person who had goals and feelings and wanted to live a good quality of life instead of just like a list of symptoms that had to be treated. And I didn't even know that medicine could be like that. I didn't know that there was like such a human element and how much it had been missing until I had that moment. And he said, you deserve to live your life. And I know you want to live your life. And we are going to try anything that we can. And if there's something out there that's going to work for you, we're going to find it. So I cried and I came home, and we literally went out to dinner to celebrate because this was 6 years in, and it was the most hope I had felt throughout this entire journey.
Wow. Long 6 years, a long 6 years of
Yeah.
trying the same thing.
Yeah. And looking back now, I'm like, because I've been in remission for like 14 years, which is amazing. Like, I'm so blessed. I am so grateful. And then I think about how long 2 years of pandemic is for everyone. And I'm like, how did I make it that long? Like, that's so long. And those are such good years. Like, I don't want to say I was sick all the time, but I was never stable from the time I was 18 to the time I was 24. I'm like, those are your bad decision-making years. Like, those are your party years and your road trip years, your bad dating years. And during that time I was really lonely, and like all the guys I met, I got a lot of like, oh, call me when you're better. Okay, so that's never, because this is an incurable disease. Thanks for playing. I don't know.
Right? Yeah. You're like, this is, I don't really know how to answer that other than to just say, bye, never mind. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But,
also, I would like to say, as a 43-year-old woman, I walked away from a doctor and never told him I was changing doctors. So
okay, so I'm
feel
good.
like, I feel like you get a pass.
I mean, I do think that people do feel an obligation and have that sort of relationship with their doctor, and they think they have to break up with their doctor. And I think that does create some fear in people, and they're less inclined to go and find another doctor, or they're afraid of what the other person will feel. And it's like, doctors have lots of people.
It's so true, though. It's so true. I think there's so many good reasons that people do have to switch doctors, and they don't realize it for various reasons, including like they might have a really good personal relationship with their doctor. The doctor might be so nice and great, but if that doctor's not keeping up with the research, keeping up with the treatments available, the combination therapies, the things that are just coming out on the front lines, then your doctor's not really giving you the service you deserve, because you're there really to reach a goal, and that goal should be remission, or at least like, manageable disease short of a cure. And it's okay to say like, hey, I really like you. This has been great. You've really helped start me on my journey, but it's time to find someone else. Like, you just need to give yourself permission to get the best treatment that you can find with who's available to you.
Yeah. We've talked about that in the past, about seeking out somebody who's going to be different, even if it's just for a second opinion, just to reevaluate what's happening or to validate the choices that you're making with your existing doctors. Like if you go back to that doctor, great, awesome. I'm glad you're happy and you've gotten validation, but you might also find somebody that's like, actually, let's try something a little bit different. Or like you said, who's up on the latest research. So especially if you're experiencing symptoms after remission, like maybe it's time to get a second opinion.
Absolutely. And two, being younger, I didn't know what a GI doctor did. So to learn that every GI doctor wasn't an IBD specialist, like blew my mind, because I didn't even know any other conditions out there. I was like, colon cancer, that's for old people. Like, newsflash, it's actually not. Young people are getting colon cancer. Crohn's and colitis were all I knew digestive diseases to be. So I didn't realize that there were other things for GI doctors to focus on or specialize in beyond IBD. And so when I ended up with kind of like a general GI doctor, it didn't occur to me that he might not be strong at the IBD side of things. And then I found a doctor and a team in the hospital system who really, really just, IBD is all they do. They're the leading ones in the state. And it shows, because it turned my whole life around.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's always something to be grateful for sure. So after you were diagnosed, you did get involved in the IBD community in a couple of different ways. So talk to us about getting involved in running, getting involved in camp, and then also getting involved with starting a whole nonprofit about this. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's go in chronological order. The first thing I did was find a fundraising bike ride. It was called Get Your Guts in Gear. And it sadly no longer exists, but the community has stayed strong like years and years past when they dissolved, which is really a testament to the person that started it and the community that was built around it. I really found cycling because I had to give up running, and cycling is still a huge part of my life. It's a great sport. It's a really great alternative to get that cardio, to get that endurance, and also to get that community that I think a lot of runners really experience. And now Team Challenge through the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has a cycle element, which I'm doing again this year for the second time. But I know there's people that have done it like 6, 7, 8 times in a row, which is pretty amazing. So that was the first thing I did, was sign up for this bike ride, because I had gotten into cycling as an alternative to running, which I gave up because of my disease. And there I met people like me for the first time that talked openly about their disease and really got it. And I kind of like met a couple of people before that, but not really. Mostly I met other college kids who just like college kids like aren't in that mentality and maturity level to step into a caregiver role at that degree, like to empathize to that degree. So that is something that really changed my life. And moments that still stay with me are feeling like I'm not alone for the first time and feeling like I don't have to explain it because you already know. And feeling like there's people in this fight with me, like not just there for me, but like with me. That kind of changed my whole attitude, changed my whole perspective. And from there, I volunteered as a counselor at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation's Camp Oasis in Wisconsin. And so at Camp Oasis, that was a really similar situation, except it was people my age. It was people that were just post-college, early 20s, who had also gone through this disease for the past little bit to several years of their life. And so now not only did I meet people that understood what I was going through, but I met people that understood what I was going through, that were dating and that were partying and that were looking for jobs for the first time and just being like, quote unquote, normal. And that just like layered up my perception that not only can I handle this, not only do I have people fighting on my side, but like there's people fighting on my side that are like me, that are young, that are fun, that are enjoying life and being successful. And so that just added to it for me. And so that was really amazing. I'm actually still doing that. And through that, I met Andrea, who co-founded our organization, The Great Bowel Movement. So we met at camp and we really connected, and we started our organization because of camp for the most part, because we witnessed these kids, these like amazing, wise, brave kids having really important conversations organically. It wasn't a program. It wasn't like, okay, sit down and list your top 3 things about Crohn's and colitis. It was just kids sitting at the playground comparing scars or like talking about their colonoscopy experiences. And you could see it in their eyes how much they needed it, how much they felt supported and understood and accepted. And then you go out into, the kind of everyday world and stuff like that doesn't happen because Crohn's and colitis, like they're digestive diseases, they're bowel diseases, like they're taboo, they're clinical. And we were like, that's not how it should be. And how do we change that? And so our first effort was making t-shirts that say, ask me about my Crohn's disease, ask me about my colitis. We did ostomy, we did J-pouch, and we just put it out there. And we got an order from someone that was not our mother's. It was from a stranger. So we were like, okay, we're onto something.
It could be me. I ordered one of those shirts. Yes, I did.
Oh, yes. It was something that, and it also stemmed out of a couple of things. We designed shirts that we didn't want to be like, you didn't want to look at it and think like, okay, this is a nonprofit shirt. Like this is like a walkathon shirt, because we wanted something that it was like intentionally, I'm going to wear this out and about, a graphic tee, because awareness doesn't happen if you can't see it, if it's in a drawer. And the other thing we thought about is, these are invisible illnesses, and sometimes that's great, but sometimes it's not great because you want to be seen and you want to be heard and understood. And we thought about, if you're a kid and you see someone in a wheelchair, for example, your parents are going to say, don't stare, don't talk to that person. But we've never considered, what if that person wants to be talked to? What if that person has a really great story that they would love to tell and love to share? And I think there are a lot of people like that out there. That kind of fed into it too, is we have stories of empowerment and we have stories of survival and fight and pride and strength. And it's all wrapped up because of the really hard things that we've all been through. And so what that does, just giving people the courage and permission to share their story, it makes them feel better about themselves, which is just great. That's great in and of itself, but it also encourages them to have better, more empowered conversations with their healthcare providers. They're being heard, they're getting better outcomes of care. It's connecting them with people that are also dealing with similar issues. It's bringing this visibility to an invisible disease. And then it's starting these conversations that let the people around us know this is what Crohn's and colitis is really like. It's not the ad you saw on TV, not the joke that you saw in like whatever sitcom. Like they're complex, they're deep, they're impactful, they're life-changing, they're bad, but like there's also good in them. there's such an interesting and important story to tell. And the only way to really tell it is from patients by looking into their eyes. And so that's how we started. From there, we quickly realized that not everybody is ready to wear their digestive disease on their shirt. And so without knowing the word for it, we got into content marketing. We started just creating some blog posts, creating some social content that was a mix of, hey, it's okay to tell your story, or here's how you deal with like this certain situations like work or dating. Here's things that you need to know as you're being asked to have these conversations, as you're explaining it to others. We brought guest voices in. We would do posts like, everybody just tell us your best dating story, and we'd have a couple people contribute. So it really was a great way to build up some voices from there. And that was really our origin.
That's really cool. And I love the shirt idea just because, you say something about inflammatory bowel disease and it's inevitable that somebody knows somebody or they themselves have it. So it's a really great way to make those connections with people. And I think especially with camp, that is super important because, there are kids that show up to that camp that they're the only kid they know. They're the only kid in their little rural town in Wisconsin that has inflammatory bowel disease. And so it's really impactful to see these kids meeting other people that have the disease, even if it doesn't look like theirs, even if they're sicker or these other kids are sicker, just knowing that they're not alone is just really such a vital part of why we want people to connect, why we want them to share their stories. So I think that's really awesome. I'm going to back you up to camp again a little bit because one of the things you do at camp is you work with their leader in training program, their LIT program. How did you get involved with that? And what are the pieces that you think are most important to be teaching them about IBD? Because I know there's other things wrapped into that. It's not just leaders in IBD, it's just leadership in general. But what about IBD do you teach them and why?
A lot of what I teach them, and I come from, so my degree is in psychology. I kind of think of everything in terms of psychosocial, in terms of behavioral. So a lot of what I focus on with our group is recognizing your own IBD story and how it's impacted you. And the kids that I have are they're incoming high school seniors, but they've all been diagnosed at different times. So some of them have been diagnosed for like a year. Some of them have been diagnosed for like 10 years. And there's such a range of emotions that come with it. And as we know, it's not linear. There's a lot of working to do to get towards like true acceptance and being able to really embody some of the positive things that come out of it. So one thing that I really always have the goal to do is help them realize the wisdom that they've earned through it and the strength that they've earned. When you're in high school, it's really, really important to fit in. That's the number one thing for a lot of kids, is just to feel accepted, to feel like they're like, again, quote unquote, normal. And all of these kids, no matter what social clique they come from, they're all the sick kid. It doesn't matter if you're, the quarterback of the football team, if you're on stage crew in the theater group, if you just go home and play Dungeons and Dragons, like whatever you do, it doesn't matter who you are. You're still the sick kid. And it's so hard. It's heartbreaking to just listen to these kids just want to not be the outlier. And as they get older and you see them start to really recognize that, I don't want to say payback because that's like it's not a cut and dry thing, but to realize that they've grown because of it and that they wouldn't have grown in the same ways without it. It's just amazing. And to see that they've got strength that their peers don't have, and they have empathy that their peers don't have, and they've got a fight that their peers don't have. To be able to help them recognize that and kind of set them up for the next steps of their life, whether they're going into the workforce, whether they're going to college, whether they're traveling, exploring, doing whatever, is that message that you're not like these other kids, but you've actually got this incredibly powerful experience that if you don't let it go to waste, you get something so valuable out of it. And the term that I like to use is that they earn their wisdom. Like we all earn our wisdom because you only get it when you go through something really hard. But once you have it, it's unlimited. You can share it with everybody.
I like that. That's really a cool way of saying it. But you're right. Like, sometimes it's hard won.
Yeah. Like you'll get there. The parents, I'm like, no, your kid is awesome. They're like, oh, he's just, I'm like, no. You're like, your kid is awesome. Like they're going to do just fine in life.
That's why camp is so valuable, because a lot of parents don't see that in their kids. Like their kids become different creatures at camp. They get with their friends and they open up in a way that's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important. I mean, these kids are friends for life. They talk to each other throughout the year. They stay friends post high school, post camp. It really it changes lives. And I know that's like a really easy thing to say, but it's very, very true in the case of something like an incurable disease.
Let's go in a slightly different path. Well, all right, you decide. Do you want to talk about animals or do you want to talk about health insurance? Do you want to be angry or sad, or which one do you want to do?
Let's do health insurance first.
Let's get angry.
This episode is sponsored by Well. Have you ever felt overwhelmed and unsure about what questions you should ask your doctor or if you should get a referral to a dietitian? If so, you are not alone. The dietitians over at Well help patients every day navigate these questions and many more. They've just released an amazing free resource for patients called the IBD Patient Starter Kit that is jam-packed with tips and tools to empower you to become your own best advocate. Check out the show notes or head on over to RomanWell.com to download a copy of the IBD Patient Starter Kit today.
I know you have had times where you've really had to consider your health insurance choices and even make some decisions about jobs and things like that based on your needs for healthcare. So let's talk about your health insurance. And if you want to tell that story, great, about changing jobs and trying to figure out the best option for you health insurance wise, and maybe some struggles that you've had with health insurance that you've had to cope with, if you don't mind.
Sure. I've been in remission for 14 years as a Remicade patient, which is amazing. I'm like grateful beyond words. But this is a really illustrative thing that I've told a lot of people is that as someone who is stable, who has this extremely long history of deep remission, of being medically controlled, I still have to deal with insurance issues, whether it's, fighting the insurance company for various reasons, as I'm sure we all know, or just like you said, making decisions based on things. And this is a factor in my health, in my finances, in my career. And it's just something that, as healthy as I am, as good as I am, it still has a major impact on my life. And that's something that I think I think that people knew me when I was sick, or kind of sick. It was easier to see the effects, but now I'm still really affected. It's just in different ways, and honestly, ways that are totally unnecessary. So we'll go through a quick sort of career/insurance journey. I was at a job for several years that had really good health insurance, who forced me to switch to home infusions. That went terribly. I did one at home. I actually didn't even do it because nobody shipped the medication. So the nurse came and was like, now what? So I was kind of uncomfortable with that situation. And the thing I'll say about home infusions is they're great. They're a really great tool if you're in a good situation, but to be mandated to let a stranger into your home is so uncomfortable. So if you get a good nurse and you're happy with the experience, fantastic. But if you don't, you just feel so stuck and so out of control. And it's really hard to think about the frustration and almost violation that patients go through by having someone enter their space. And if they're really sick and they're really fatigued, do they take the time to clean their space? What do you put on Netflix? Do you have to scrub your toilet? Do you have to have sparkling water on hand? It's just, you don't have guests over. Now this person is coming in your house. So the first home infusion just did not go well. So I ended up going into the home infusion company's office, which still billed us home infusion through insurance, which was the only way that I would still be able to have infusions. And that was a horrible experience. And I actually really liked it at the hospital clinic. I had relationships with the nurses because I had gone there for years and years. I saw them every 8 weeks. I saw people have babies and get married, and it's just all of these moments in life. And they were great. And so now I'm in this cold, cinder block painted wall office building with a nurse that was not great. She came in one day. I'll tell you a story. She comes in one day and she's got a thermometer. She says, I think this thermometer is going to be more accurate. It's did we have a problem with accuracy? Was that an issue before? And I kid you not. She goes, I got it from Target in the baby section. It was red flags everywhere. Why are you shopping at Target? Don't you have a medical supply company? Why do you think baby thermometers are more accurate than adult thermometers? Why are we having this conversation? I don't know. It was
weird.
It was so weird. It's I don't know how to manage this conversation. I have not had a history with fevers. So like, I'm not very concerned about the accuracy of my temperature, but there's patients that are, and there's patients, going back to our earlier discussion, that are afraid to speak up or feel like they don't have the right to speak up if they're uncomfortable with something. Or the care is not being provided at the level it should be. So the whole thing was just uncomfortable and awful. And like the TV didn't work and the internet didn't work, and but it really comes down to that having medical care or having a treatment that has these extra sort of layers beyond just like taking a pill or whatever, whether it's a self-injection or infusion. It just subjects patients to so many other things. So you've got like insurance costs, you've got specialty pharmacy, you've got scheduling infusions, you've got financial assistance, just like all of these things to manage. So then I got a new job and I could not wait to get out of that infusion center. And I switched to home infusions because my hospital system had started to offer a home infusion service. I was like, this will be great. This is everything I wanted. I love my hospital. I love their staff. It'll be great to be at home. And this was like, oh my gosh, this was like February 2020. So I started this process, and this was probably 4 weeks of phone calls of, okay, call the home infusion company. I would like to switch to you. Okay, we need your order from the doctor. Call the doctor. The doctor is like, okay, we already have orders in for someone else. Okay, call back to the infusion company. They're like, well, we need to make sure your insurance covers it. Call the insurance. They're like, we don't know. It's just going around in circles. And this was just to switch a healthy person on the same medication from sticking an IV in my arm at one place to sticking an IV in my arm at another place. But finally got worked out, and like timing was just like divine intervention. That was like right as pandemic started. So having home infusions was really, really a blessing to get that all in place. I can't imagine how much more complicated it would have been once pandemic set in. So that went really smoothly. And I will note also, so that was a really small company. They didn't offer health insurance. It was on a marketplace plan, which only worked out financially because of the financial assistance provided by the pharmaceutical company, which again, very grateful for. I wouldn't have been able to accept that job without that being in place. So that's the thing, that like when you have a disease, you don't think about like, oh, will this ever make me not take a job that's a really good step for my career? That's not what you're thinking about, but it's part of it. So that was a job at a marketing agency. It was really great. I learned so much, and I wanted to move into the healthcare space in marketing. So earlier this year, I was offered a job in the healthcare life sciences industry at a marketing agency. And it was just an amazing opportunity, great benefits. I'm reviewing the health plan, and it's such a smaller deductible compared to a marketplace plan and all this stuff. And they offered a little reimbursement, which was great. Like, I was like, this is so nice. Like, this is just beautiful, having to not worry about this anymore, not having to be like, okay, nothing catastrophic can happen to me before my first 2 infusions, or I will like have to sell my car to be able to afford this. Like, that's not an exaggeration. So I'm reading through the plan, and they don't cover Remicade, and I can't find any of the biosimilars on it either. And I didn't really want to switch to a biosimilar anyway. And so our HR manager, who is an absolute angel, called the broker, the insurance broker, and had her double check. And of course, the broker comes back saying, I'm not seeing that on the list, but don't worry, we'll just find something else equivalent. I'm like, okay, that's not a thing. That's not a thing for us. We only have so many options on the market. I've gone through half of them, and I have 14 years of proof saying this is what works for me. This is what's best for me. And if I switch, we're risking a flare, we're risking surgery, we're risking hospitalization. And like, those are all more expensive than a medication that I already know works for me. So to be able to, I know this is a long story because it's like a long situation. To be able to see if that health plan would cover Remicade, I would have to sign up for the plan, have my doctor file the appeal to say that Remicade should be covered for me, which inevitably takes longer than 6 weeks, which is the Remicade schedule that I'm on now. And that's not even a guarantee. That's not even a like, okay, go through this and then you'll it'll be approved. That's just to know if I have a fighting chance. So I could sign up for this plan and still not be covered. And then I am totally SOL. So really, it was a lot of weighing my options. And I actually decided to stay on the marketplace plan, which is not really ideal. And I can't stay on it past this year. So now what I'm going through in my head is, what happens if the plan doesn't change on January 1st of 2023 and Remicade still not covered? Do I start those conversations with my doctor now? Do we need to get a backup plan in place? And also, these processes, they take a long time. I'm in a 6-week Remicade schedule. So now I'm looking at my Remicade schedule saying, how do I time this so that I can get an infusion as close to the end of the year as possible to buy myself time to figure this out when January 1st hits? And like, as a patient, I shouldn't have to do any of that, but I certainly shouldn't have to alter my treatment cycle because of like financial or policy issues. That should be uninterrupted because, my doctor prescribed it for a reason. And these are just, that was a really long story. And that is as a person in full remission that I'm still dealing with. And it just doesn't have to be that way.
No, that's so disappointing to hear. And I am shocked that Remicade wouldn't be on anybody's formulary because it's such a commonly used medication. So that's wild. I'm sorry. That's a struggle. And like you said, you're in remission. You've been in remission so long. It doesn't feel like it's something you should have to think this hard about or spend this much time doing because it's a system that supposedly works right now.
Right.
Can I back you up for a second though? Because I did find it interesting that before you accepted the job, you were able to look at the health insurance plan. That is not something that in somebody who does not have a chronic illness, when been offered a job, that they've been like, here's the health insurance plan so you can review it. Did you ask? How did you manage that?
I actually don't know if it was before or if it was like in my first week, but I do think that's becoming more common, especially in the labor market today, that there's a lot of employee power that I think you can ask to review that before you accept an offer.
I would imagine.
Yeah, if you're in a situation like us, it is a factor and it is important. I recently heard a different story of somebody who he's a diabetic and he turned down a really nice offer because the insulin costs on that particular plan would have offset his pay bump by switching jobs. And so now this employer is losing a really great candidate because some massive insurance company covers the other brand of insulin.
So dumb. This is so
like
frustrating.
they shouldn't even be connected. How are they even connected? But this is the world we live in.
Alicia, I did ask to have information about insurance
Did
before
you?
I accepted it. Yep.
That's great. How did you phrase that? Out of curiosity, like how did you phrase that to the HR person? Were you open with them right from the beginning about your Crohn's disease?
Yes. And I think that anybody who listens to this show know I will say it to anyone, but I'm not interested in hiding the fact that I have Crohn's in order to try to get a job. If the fact that I have Crohn's is a problem, I don't want to work for you anyway. So I share it. It's very important that people know that I have Crohn's because it could affect me being able to come to work. I could end up at the hospital. All these reasons that Megan has already said. So, I mean, everything that Megan just said, I cannot accept a job where I don't have insurance that's going to cover my care.
Yes. I know there are people that are not comfortable talking about it. And perhaps it also depends on the type of industry you're in, I think, as well.
Yeah, generally I tell people not to disclose until after they've accepted an offer and started. The thing that somebody told me once is hiring managers even having the information, because it can introduce bias into their decision. They might not hire you, not because they're discriminating against your disease, but because they just don't want to set themselves up for the liability of being accused later. So just a thing to note. But then I'm on the other hand,
in and of itself seems like something you could sue for discrimination.
Right. I don't know. But I think you're totally in your rights to say, I would like to review the health insurance plan before I make my decision. And I think at that point, that's all you have to say. And then when you start, be like, hey, this is, something that I live with, and it might affect me in these ways, but these are the ways that I've learned to cope so that I can be a good employee and meet the needs of the role.
Right. Obviously you have to disclose that there's something going on if you need some sort of accommodation, like if you are maybe symptomatic and they are asking you to work in an office setting, maybe you are, you get an office that's closer to the bathroom, or you have more frequent breaks or things like that, that you can ask for reasonable accommodations if you do need them.
Yeah. For sure. And I found that when you, again, this kind of gets back to our mission with the Great Bowel Movement is when you educate those around you, they're much more understanding. They're much more empathetic and willing to accommodate.
Absolutely.
I used to lifeguard in college. Lifeguarding was the best job ever. I wish it was a high paying career. Can I sit out in the sun? And I had to tell my manager, I was like, I can't work the 4th of July weekend because I can't sit up in a chair and have like confidence that I'm not going to have to run to the bathroom. And she was just so great. She was like, I have people in my family that live with similar issues. She didn't really get into it, but she was like, I'm going to put you on the supervisor role that day. So, your job will be to make sure that all the lifeguards in the chairs are doing their job but like, you won't be tied to a chair. And she was like, we really value you and you're important here. And it just having that sort of support and understanding from employers or anyone around you it just makes a world of difference.
Yeah, it does. And I do think vast majority of people will be understanding when you're asking for some sort of accommodation or you're asking for these types of things, but it's one bad apple spoils the bunch kind of situation. So, there are also times where you can be justifiably protective of what's happening with you as well.
Yeah, that's very true also.
And I completely understand that. I don't want anybody to think I'm shaming them for not just, screaming from
Thanks
the
for
rooftops that
shaming
they
everyone,
haven't.
Robin.
But I'm also, I'm older and I've had this disease for a really long time. And so, I don't know, I feel like that's one of the luxuries of getting older as a woman. You just don't give a crap anymore. And so
very true.
I mean, this is how it is. So I completely understand not wanting to share in this situation when you're job hunting and worrying that it may affect your ability to actually get the offer. But I'm at a point where that doesn't come into my mind as much as having a workplace that accepts 100%. So
yeah, it's complicated too. And there's the flip side, right? Like I've been asked like, what's something you're really proud of? I'm like, I built a leadership program at a camp for these kids. Like I'm super proud of that. And that definitely is a job skill. So like there's some situations where you're putting yourself in a really positive light as well.
Starting a nonprofit organization, creating, social marketing plans for all of this stuff. I mean, yeah, there's tons of job skills you've built from just the side hustles that you're doing, the side projects you're doing.
Totally.
Also thinking about your situation, Robin, like fortunately, you are in a very significantly better place than you were, but you still have had some adjustments you've had to make health-wise because of you getting so sick from your last surgeries and things like that. Whereas Megan, who's been in remission for 14 years, maybe it's less necessary for her to bring it up to her employer because she's just, it's kind of a non-issue except for her health insurance being a big fat pain in the ass. Let's shift a bit. I know the other thing that you wanted to bring up, which is of course near and dear to Robin and I both, is the impact of not just the people around you, but also the animals around you being a great support system. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as you know, I recently lost my dog of 16 years and she was absolutely amazing. And the absence is very much felt. But just looking back and realizing the steadfastness that she had throughout my entire journey. So I got her when I graduated college. So I was still very sick. I had very active disease. I had like pretty severe symptoms. And I'd grown up with dogs. So I moved out of the college apartment into a house, into a duplex, and I could have a dog for the first time in 4 years, aside from like summers at my parents' house. So I got a dog immediately and she was the best. The thing about dogs is there's no unconditional love like that of a dog. They love you when you get home from anywhere. They love to be a part of your life. They love to be involved in activities. It's just like this bond that, humans, as much as we love them, like we argue with everybody. Like we don't always see eye to eye and it's just not like that. And when I was sick, I remember actually related to Remicade. I remember I had a colonoscopy with this, I think it was with my new good doctor that I'd switched to. And I'd gone through a couple treatment options and they weren't working. And basically the decision was we're going to try Remicade, which clearly worked based on this entire conversation. But it came down to Remicade or surgery. Like if this didn't work, it was my last resort. It was the only thing that was approved at that time. And it was a lot. Again, I was living on my own, away from my parents, away from a support system. And I came home and I sat on the couch and I started crying. And my dog, like I saw her ears and her face just do this thing of total like concern and what is wrong. And she's like jumped up on my lap because like they know. And then later, being in remission, I'd get the occasional cold or whatever and come home sick and be like, where's that empathy that you showed me? And she'd be like, no. I've got a list of things for us to do. And it's going to start with playing with this toy. No, I just want to sleep. But I think for so many people, animals are such an integral part of our lives and our disease journeys. And I know people that their pets have helped provide a really strong sense of routine, which is so important when you feel like your body is out of control, where your body is unpredictable and rebelling against you. Getting out for some gentle walks. You just walk around the block or like a light hike down a trail with a dog to get some steps in, get your blood pumping a little bit. Just, have that reason, like that why to keep going and something to keep fighting for. And it's something that's such a big part of all of our lives. And
I think the thing that we hear a lot is that IBD is very isolating.
Mhm.
And, because if you're very sick, you're stuck inside a lot, or, especially if you're in pain or you're very symptomatic, you need to go to the bathroom a lot, you're stuck inside, and so it can be very isolating. Your friends don't necessarily understand. The nice thing about animals, especially dogs, is that because, cats don't usually like to walk on leashes very well. It makes you get out and you meet people. Other people with dogs meet other people with dogs, or like you're out
So
walking
true.
and you see a dog and you've got to meet the dog. Frankly, I know more people's dogs than actual people, but it is a thing, it gets you out and it gets you being social, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Like you said, you're just walking around the block, you're getting out and you're meeting people and you're getting that sense of community, even if it's just a little taste of it, which is really lovely.
Absolutely. We actually have a dog walk group in our neighborhood, which is great. Apparently not everybody has this. You should get one. But I was in a Psychology Today article, and it was related to pandemic. So it wasn't necessarily related to Crohn's and colitis, but I was like, we've been going on these dog walks and some of the people in our neighborhood are involved in improv. And so it's always a funny walk. Like there's puns, there's jokes, there's games. It's just like really entertaining. And I was all just like jovial until pandemic hit. And then we're so isolated. We're not going anywhere. And so now the same thing, the same like 20 minutes a day walk is getting us out of our house. It's getting us fresh air. It's getting us exercise. It's getting us socialization. I'm like, that used to be a little thing. And now it's a really big thing. Like nothing has changed except the relativeness to the situation. But like, if we didn't have that, I probably would have gone crazy. Like that little bit just kept me latched onto something.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. And our neighborhood is filled with dogs and people, and more dogs than people, sometimes it seems. And even during the pandemic, I would see people out walking with people they knew, their friends. One would be walking on the street, one would be walking on the sidewalk. So they kept their like 6 feet apart, but they were still figuring out like how to continue doing that and getting some socialization with each other, but in a safe manner. So it was really kind of cute to see. My dog just hated it. So he didn't want to walk outside typically because he was a cranky old man.
Oh,
well, Megan, I'm going to ask you the last question. What is one piece of advice? It can be more than one, but what's some advice you have for our IBD community?
My number one piece of advice is to find and connect with the people that get you. It is the best thing you can do outside of like actual medical care. And when you say it to somebody, because I'm like very out there, people will say, hey, my niece just got diagnosed. My neighbor just got diagnosed. Can I connect with you? I'm like, sure. And it sounds great on the surface. It's like something that like you don't really believe in the power of until you're there. Like I was talking about going on the bike ride for the first time or going to camp for the first time. When you meet the people that know what you're going through, you're just so much more not alone. And it's just a weight off to connect with other people. On the surface, it's having people that you can talk to when you encounter certain situations. How did you manage this? How did you get through this? Or like, I just want to vent for a little bit. It's also in the silence of like not having to explain every little thing, not having to be like, it's like this, it's like this. And people are like, like healthy people are like, well, I kind of get it, but not really. Like they don't really get it until they've lived it. There are, like I said, people that I've met from Get Your Guts in Gear that 15 years later were as close as ever. People that I met from camp that are some of my literal best friends in life. Like there's a reason that I keep going back year after year. It is the support system. Maybe you knew you needed it, maybe you didn't, but you need it. So go out however you find your community, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through an online group, whether it's through whatever else there is. Like I met people through volunteering. Not everyone is like the volunteer type, which is totally fine. But there's online groups, there's in-person groups, there's in-person groups that aren't quite as like open up your soul support groups. And maybe that's what you need, which is great. The point being like find what works for you. But when you find your people and you feel like you know there's people fighting on your side and you're fighting together, the journey gets easier. And that's so important.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you that you have to figure out how that looks for you. You're right. Not everybody wants to go sit at a support group and have that experience, but it's definitely important to try to find your place, even if it's getting involved in a walk committee or just going to one of these charity walks or a charity ride or something like that, just to see the people that are coming. It can be incredibly powerful just to see the just sheer humanity that's at some of these events and gives you a chance to feel connected in that way.
Yeah.
Well, Megan, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. And so I'm so glad that you were able to join us. We're going to end the show by saying thank you, everyone, for joining us for Bowel Moments. Thank you, Megan, for joining us for Bowel Moments. And
thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, guys, this is Megan. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and share with your friends.